Hey guys, welcome to Daily Wisdom Dive Day 6, where today we're taking a dive into Proverbs chapter 6. I want to say that although Proverbs chapter 6 discusses many things, I was able to pull out four key topics that I think are really addressed and is the core of Proverbs chapter 6. And again, it's like many of the other chapters, there is a call to acknowledge wisdom, pay attention to wisdom and understanding, although that comes later in the chapter. But I think the four major topics that we can pull out of Proverbs chapter 6 are: number one, financial obligation; two, procrastination; three, discipline, diligence, and self-motivation; and four, laziness. I find it pretty interesting that Solomon starts off the chapter by, admonishing his son that if he entered into a guarantee of debt of his friend, or he entered into an agreement of some sort for a financial obligation with a stranger, and we know that that's in verse 1. The agreement, entering into agreement here, is the word striking hands with a stranger. When you strike hands with a stranger, that's pretty much what it means. You've entered into an agreement with them. And so Solomon is telling his son, if you guarantee the debt of a friend, or you entered into some financial obligation with a stranger, you're trapped. And verse 2 pretty much reads like this: Thou art snared with the words of thy mouth, thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. So doing something like that, he's pretty much saying you've trapped yourself. You're caught by the words of your mouth. However, verse 3 says, if you find yourself in that situation, there's a way out. Don't let pride keep you in a situation you never really intended to be in. But if you find yourself having entered into some form of financial obligation without having properly thought it through before, be humble, because at this point you're at the mercy of the friend or the stranger or whomever it is that you've entered into debt with. Be humble, acknowledge your mistake, approach that person, and then try to get out of that debt as quickly as possible. So I think the key lesson here is guaranteeing the debt of an irresponsible person will trap you. It will get you in trouble, most likely, right? As children of God, we know that God calls us to help the needy when they're in need, but he doesn't call us to make unwise financial commitments. So the thing to note here is, if you have gotten yourself into some form of financial obligation without having properly thought it through, acknowledge your mistake, be humble, and get out of it quickly. Now, some key reminders that I think are also important here for this topic of financial obligation is that there is a big difference between being generous and helping out the needy and entering into financial obligations without having first thought it through. Another reminder is that we should not allow our emotions to take us to a place where our bank account cannot keep us. In other words, our financial situation is what should dictate our emotional reactions to certain situations versus the other way around. A lot of times we're emotionally invested about something and then we don't even think about the finances. We get ourselves into certain situations because we were driven by emotions, and then at the end of the day we realize, damn, we're really trapped. But I think the reminder is, let your financial situation dictate your emotional reaction versus your emotional reaction dictating your financial situation. I hope that made sense. Based on those reminders and this first topic, I think it flows nicely into the next topic, which is procrastination. And Solomon in Proverbs chapter 6 verses 4 and 5, he tells his son, look, don't even give sleep to your eyes, neither slumber to your eyelids. That means don't sleep. Don't waste any time. Get out of it as quickly as possible, right? And so I think that's where the topic of procrastination comes from. It says, deliver thyself as a roe from the hand of the hunter, that's verse 5, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler. And when we talk about procrastination means putting off the need to do something to a future time and doing so intentionally and habitually. Now, it's okay to put off your task occasionally when something arises and you can't get to it. It's okay to put it off, of course. But once you start putting off tasks to a future point and you start doing that habitually, you have now found yourself in a routine of procrastination. And the more or the longer your task stays uncompleted, of course, the more aggravation and the more frustration it's going to cause you. So Proverbs chapter 6 verses 4 to 5 really drives home the lesson of urgency here when it comes to getting things done. Like, don't wait to do it tomorrow. Don't wait to do it at a later time, especially if you can do it now. Get it done. And it relates that to, a deer escaping a hunter or a bird escaping a trap. Listen, when a deer is escaping a hunter or a bird is escaping a trap, they're running for their lives. And that's where the principle of urgency comes. As quickly as they're running for their lives, like they don't play in trying to get out, is the same urgency we should apply to trying to get out of debt or just completing our task in general. The third topic is discipline, diligence, and self-motivation. And that comes from Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 to 8, where it says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest." Now, in verse 6, Solomon is like, go to the ant, you sluggard, or you lazy person, and be wise. And I find it interesting that he's telling us humans to go to a creature to get wisdom, because we know as human beings, we're prone to lifelong learning, right? And we're educated. An ant is a creature that's not educated. And for Solomon to kind of advise us to take lessons from the ant is really eye-opening. That means as human beings, we fall in certain areas where even a creature does things better or in a way that we humans should. If you've paid any attention to an ant, you know how they work. These little creatures have a tireless work ethic. They're very diligent in their search for food. And when they find food, they know to eat or use what is needed in that moment and to also store up for a later time. It also says they don't have an overseer, they don't have a ruler, they don't have a guide, but yet they know what to do. They don't wait for somebody to instruct them on what to do. They know what needs to be done and they get it done. They don't wait till it's closer to winter to start gathering up their food. They do it in the time of harvest, which is in the summer. That is when they gather up their food so that when winter comes around, they can rest and know that they have plenty of food to get them through that season until the next summer. I think the important principle here is God's grace plus our work equals success. And so as humans, we can definitely learn from the ant that we need to be disciplined. We as humans who have that natural part of us to tell us what to do, but we also sometimes we have people overseeing us. We have parents, we have mentors, we have instructors, we have teachers, and even then it's still hard to be diligent. It's still hard to be disciplined. It's still hard to be self-motivated. So Solomon is telling us to be like the ant. They have no one to tell them what to do, but they get things done because they're diligent, they're disciplined, and they're self-motivated. Now, the final topic that I pulled from Proverbs chapter 6 is laziness, and that comes from verses 9 through 11, where it really talks about laziness and the consequences of laziness. Proverbs 6, 9 to 11 says, "How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise from your sleep? Because you say, a little more sleep, a little more slumber, a little more folding of the hands to sleep. So shall poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man." What these verses are saying is pretty much somebody who's lazy, they want to sleep all the time. They don't want to do work. They don't want to do anything. Like, it's not telling us not to sleep, because obviously sleep is an important need for us humans. But the lazy person always wants to sleep. They don't want to do any work. They don't want to do anything. And Solomon is driving home the point here that, hey, if you're lazy, then poverty and scarcity is going to come on you like quickly, fast. You're not even going to know where it comes from. Just like an armed person approaches you and you don't know where they came from, so too will the lazy person be hit by scarcity and poverty. Now, God doesn't bless laziness with abundance. It's normal for us to say, God is my source, God is my provider. And yes, all of that is true. But it's important to remember that while he's your source and while he's your provider, he's not going to bless your laziness. He only rewards the work that you do. We have this saying that God blesses those, or God helps those who help themselves. I don't think that's really a Bible-based saying, but it helps drive home the point here that you get out what you put in. right? He can only do something with whatever you give him. And if you've put in nothing, you get nothing. So if we want God to be able to use anything, we have to be willing to give him something. And the lazy person oftentimes put in nothing. And so most time their result is nothing, and it results in lack and poverty. But that's all I have for Proverbs chapter 6. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what are the key lessons that you took out of Proverbs chapter 6. And join me back tomorrow where we take a daily dive into Proverbs chapter 7.